In this video, we're going to talk about moving abroad, more specifically to Medellin, Colombia. Follow along. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever it is you're located, and thanks for watching. For those who have been watching me for any period of time, I moved to Medellin, Colombia approximately a year ago. A year and a week or so since Memorial Day last year. I stayed there for 3 months outside of a trip back to the U.S. And then leaving and going to Vietnam before heading back to Houston. But I wanted to take a moment to talk about the possibility of moving to Colombia because I get this question all the time. Why did I move? Why did I pick there specifically? And of course, how was it? I have a lot of videos that I've done in Medellin, Colombia. If you haven't seen them, take a look at the links below. The number one reason, well, there's a few reasons for wanting to move to Colombia or moving to any other country outside of the U.S. If you figure what's going on right now in this country, there's a few reasons to possibly move, or should I say even more specifically, to retire in another country. And I guess the main reason would be quality of life. Are you getting the quality of life that you want in this country? If you are 62 or above, in which case most of my viewers are not, but if you happen to be 62 or above and you're watching this video, and you're going to retire in the U.S., and you don't have a pension, and you don't have money in the stocks, what are you going to do? Are you going to work at Walmart? Are you going to continue to stay at your current job until you're 72 or 85 or whatever age? What are you going to do? I know myself, and I get the alerts, I'm sure you do as well if you're anywhere near my age, as to how much I'd be getting from Social Security as of today if I were to go on Social Security at the earliest time, which for me, an early payout, they call it an early payout, is 62. In which case, I'm not sure what the average age of the average black man in America lives to. But I know I'm not waiting until I think the full payout is 72. It's either 70 or 72 or 75. I don't know, but I know I'm not going to wait around for then. So back to Colombia. The number one reason to move for anyone there, I would say, would be the cost of living, the quality of life. And by quality of life, I mean a few things. I mean medical care, the cost of and the quality of. I mean the cost to live in an apartment or purchase a home. I mean the weather. For me, that tops the list of the number one reason to move to Colombia is the weather. I wrote a list, what most people think of, but I'm going to tell you what I chose. Obviously, the strength of the dollar is important. You cannot move to another country, and in this case, we're talking about Colombia. You cannot move to another country and expect to earn their salary and live comfortably. You have to take the U.S. dollar to that said country. It could be Colombia, Guatemala, Panama, the DR. It could be the Philippines. It could be Vietnam. You know, you can find a 3-bedroom apartment in Vietnam and Colombia for probably $450. And from what I can tell in Vietnam, they are really nice. But of course, Colombia, Panama, you know, these places have, let's just say, would possibly be better for you because they're in the same hemisphere. They're going to be in the same time zone, possibly, or plus or minus an hour or two. And I think if you were to move on the other side of the world, you are totally isolated away from what you know. especially as far as the quickness to be able to get home in case of an emergency, the length of time it takes to fly to that said country, obviously 24, 28 hours, it's crazy. 3 to 4 flights possibly. I've done it a few times, and it's intense, especially the way things are now and the cost of flights and what's going to happen to flights, international flights coming up soon. We won't know for, I guess, another 3, 4, 5, 6 months. But, and the biggest thing with, for me, the biggest difference for moving to Southeast Asia versus Central or South America is the language barrier. Now, with that said, you can move to Vietnam, and let me tell you something. Unless you're in a tourist area, you're going to be lost. I mean, you can speak Spanish, you can speak French, and you can speak any of the general, normal, additional languages or languages with an accent, and you can get by. But Vietnam was a struggle. Vietnam was a struggle for me. Unless you're in the tourist areas, they can talk and you won't have any idea. You can't pick out any of the words. Whereas I've been to Central and South America enough and have communicated with those in the U.S. that speak Spanish enough to be able to get by. Now, that's one of my biggest challenges, though, for me, for living in Central and South America. That is probably, out of all the positives, that's the least positive for me. It's positive over Southeast Asia, but from speaking English to moving to another country, it was challenging for me. A lot of people go there for the weather, the cost of living, and the women. Now, I will say the women are absolutely beautiful. Whether they're all real or not, I don't know. But I'm telling you, it's a sight to see. And they're everywhere. I don't know how it's working right now with everything closed. I can't picture Parquilleras being closed. But I will say that they are absolutely beautiful. But, that never was a top factor for moving there for me. Number one, because when I moved there, I had a girlfriend, and then I didn't. But even still, when I didn't, let me tell you something. It's hard enough to understand somebody in your own country. Trying to understand a woman in your own country, or if you're a woman trying to understand the man in a relationship, is challenging. So add the language barrier on top of that, and it was intense. I mean, try to have just a general conversation, and you can't. For me, that's a struggle. I speak enough Spanish, but not enough to hold a conversation. So I can rattle off of, yo hablo muy poquito español, que mi ex esposa es latina, se aprende poquito, pero bastante, and my enunciation is good. So when they hear me say that, and it doesn't matter if I'm ordering un cuarto de pollo pachuga, por favor, if I'm ordering food, and they hear it, my enunciation is good, and then they just, and I told people, and I told my drivers and dance instructors, when you talk real fast and have to say, más despacio, por favor, slower, please. All I hear, that's what it sounds like. Literally, I can understand the same thing out of this, is the same thing as if they're speaking fast. It's like Morse code. If you miss one word, you're still trying to catch up in the mind, and in the next 5 or 6 or 7, there may be a word or two in there that you would normally pick up, but because you're behind already, I can't. That's just how my mind works. Now, don't let what I say stop you, because I am more pro Colombia, Panama, Guatemala, of course. Let me tell you something. Absolutely beautiful countries. The landscape, the beauty, nothing is 100% perfect or positive. So obviously I'm telling you the good things about it. I mean, there are some areas in Colombia that are really struggling. That's why you have to take the US dollar and take it there. But out of all the people that I've met there and I still staying in communication with there, shout out to Jason. And let me stop also, and I want to give props to one of the first people that I met when I was there, and I was with him the last day when I left. And I met him at Sweet Georgia Cafe, which was like my hangout, and I'm sure a lot of others also. His name is James, and he passed away about 2 weeks ago. Really great guy. He was like the glue. If you were there, he's the person that took your phone number. And if you've been there, you know who I'm talking about. He took your phone number and he added you to the chat list on WhatsApp. And I still watch the chat from WhatsApp from there. And interesting, I should say. A lot is going on and a lot of talk about back here in the U.S. and how happy they are that they're not having to deal with this, because it's a struggle going on in the U.S. right now. And from my understanding from Rob, the owner of Sweet Georgia Cafe, that the day before or a couple of days before James passed, is that he stated that he did not regret moving to Colombia. And it was one of the best decisions that he had made. And I'm sure a lot of other brothers are still there saying the same thing. Again, Jason, Ed, Carlton, there's a bunch of cats down there, let me tell you, that love living there. I have not heard anybody complain about, the lockdown being too intense. And their lockdown was a real lockdown, like what our country should have done. Go look at my other videos over the past 3 months. When this first happened, I said, just shut it down. Shut down the whole U.S. for a month. And, bring the curve down. Nope. You can't do it piece by piece by piece by piece. And here we're in this instance. But I've not heard any one brother down there complain. And I think I texted James maybe 2 months ago. I didn't know there were any health issues or anything. And I think he was checking on me. We were just, back and forth, which I do with a few cats down there. And some watch my videos to keep in touch with them. And because I hope to go back. If not to live and retire, I will definitely be back to visit. As a matter of fact, whichever opens soon, the Philippines, Guatemala, or Colombia, I'm there first. So hopefully it's the closest ones too. Flights are going to be challenging, let me tell you. But, people move there for the number one reason. Ultimately, when you combine everything together, it's quality of life. And that's what I think a lot of people are lacking in this country, the quality of life, meaning you have money, you have time, and you feel safe, and the education system is good, and the political system is good. I hear a lot of people saying that the U.S. is great, or it's going to be great again. I don't remember when it was great. The people are great. Most of the people are great, but I'm not a fan of the government, obviously, and for obvious reasons. And growing up in D.C., let me tell you, what we're going through right now, yeah, man, it was challenging back then. But the lack of quality of life, especially losing over 40 million jobs in the past 2.5 months. Just imagine, how happy are you now compared to 3 months ago or a year ago or 6 months ago? And if you are black, even more so. One thing I haven't mentioned that Colombia has, and I can speak of this personally, what Colombia has over the U.S. is the way that we're treated by the police and those in charge. And a lot of countries are the same too. I mean, you don't get nervous when a police car pulls behind you down there. Well, shoot, I'm not driving down there, but let's say when they're walking across the street and you're jaywalking. Here you got to wonder, this cop could actually write you a ticket or take you to jail or whatever for jaywalking, walking across the street. We think we're free in this country, but let me tell you, there's so many things you cannot do, and registrations and licenses and all this stuff you have to pay just to be able to have a car. So moving to Colombia, you don't have that sense of you're always being watched. You're always being followed. I told someone recently, to this day, I still cannot have a car creep up behind me down the sidewalk, down the street. I still remember cops in D.C. rolling up behind us. You can hear them rolling real slow and following you. So to this day, if that happens to me, I will stop. What do you, Christmas time in the parking lot where the people will follow you around, try to get your space. I'll duck in between you. Don't follow me around. I hate that. You don't have that issue in Colombia. I'm sure there's racism everywhere, but I personally did not feel it. The one time I did feel it was by a gentleman. I'll just leave it at that. A gentleman, it was at Sweet Georgia Cafe, and he had a dog. And those who know me that watch this video, you know what I'm talking about. Especially you, Ed. You were telling me, Rob. Okay. And But that was the only time that I felt like I was back in the U.S. And that lasted I just knew to stay away from him. And he was from the U.S. I'm going to put that out there. And that's why I had that feeling. He was one of the expats that moved there, ex-military, and he had a dog in the restaurant. Anyway, I had a problem with it. But that was the only time I felt racism, and it was from another American there. I felt so comfortable with the police. You talk to cops. Buenos dias, buenas tardes, buenas noches. You talk to them. You don't have those same issues, so you have that level of feeling comfortable. You don't feel like you're isolated because Colombians come in every shade and color in the rainbow, from the whitest of the white to the blackest of the black. So I look Colombian when I'm there. If I keep my mouth shut, and I have on this shirt too, shoot, that just doubles it up. I'm Colombian. I was on a cart on the tram, the tram that goes up not the tram, but what's it called? The cable car on the side of the mountain. And it was a couple of girls and a guy, and they were laughing and joking, and I'm going on the other side of the mountain, which was, I got on the wrong one, if you see that video. And it got worse on the other side of the mountain. And I was just like, just smile. Don't say anything, because nobody knows. Nobody knows you're a stranger. Nobody knows you got money. Nobody knows, keep your camera down. It's not the time to be a tourist. As long as you don't act like a tourist, you are Colombian there. I don't care what shade. You could be white as white to the black as black and everything in between. You are Colombian. You are paisa. Paisa are what they call themselves. They are country people. They are into their country. So there's a lot of reasons to move to Colombia, to sum it up. For me, it was the weather. It's the strength of the dollar. Being able to get an apartment for, $450, a nice size apartment. Internet everywhere. There's another thing too. Internet's everywhere. It's in the park. We don't have that here. It's in the park, it's in the mall, it's everywhere, and it's free. And I don't know how they make it where you cross the street and it doesn't work from the park, but it doesn't. But then if you're at a bar and you're overlooking the park, just ask them for their Wi-Fi. Learn how to say that in Spanish too, what's your Wi-Fi password, because you'll be using a lot of Wi-Fi. You can make Wi-Fi calls from there. So the strength of the dollar, safety if you have kids, it's schooling. Check out the Traveling Joneses YouTube channel if you can. I wanted to note, and I wrote a few things down. According to internationalliving.com, those with the best quality of life voted for by expats, by people who have moved abroad, tied out of the top 5, and the U.S. is nowhere in this, by the way. Top 4th spot out of the top 5. There is no 5, so there's 2 4s. It's Colombia and Panama. Okay, and then 3rd is Costa Rica, 2 is Spain, and 1 is Portugal. According to U.S. News, as far as quality of life, it's Canada. They're the only ones that rank on any of these scales, and I saw a lot of these too. They vary slightly, but for the most part, you can look at it and say, Europe has a better quality of life than we do here. Oh, I mentioned medical care, but what about prescriptions? I mean, you can go in Colombia and you just go to the pharmacy and say, this is what I need. I use simvastatin and what's it called for diabetes. But anyway, I ran out of medication. I was there for 3 months. I didn't want to call my doctor here. Even though it's free here in the U.S., there I ended up paying like $3 and $8, I think. And I just picked it up. You just tell them what you need and they get it for you. Most of the time they speak English. And they are pretty, I don't know if they're doctors or nurses, but they are healthcare providers at the pharmacy. And the pharmacies, there's more pharmacies there than there are gas stations here. So they're everywhere. And you can just go up and buy what you want. There's no, there's no problem with it. There's, like you can't buy Sudafed or whatever the sinus medication here without pulling out your driver's license. They don't have that issue there. And I mean, it is what it is. You take it for what it's worth. But I still say healthcare is better there. By worldpopulation.com, the top 3 countries in the world are, well, no, not the top 3. Out of the top 100 for best for quality of life, the U.S. is way down the list at 37. And France and Italy was 1st and 2nd. Colombia, by the way, was 22nd, which beat out the U.S. When people say the U.S. is the best country in the world, and it doesn't matter what they say to me, if they say this is the best this is the best burger in the world. Oh yeah, well, how many burgers have you had? This is the best country in the world. Really? How many countries have you been to? Most of the time they never left this country. And even if they did they have a burger in all those other countries too, or that one other country, or two other, or 5, 10 other countries? Have something to compare it against before you start making blanket statements like that. This is the best. Well, how do you know? You know, it's safe. Colombia's crime-ridden. You're still going to have people, when you want to go to Colombia, if anybody's watching this video that wants to go, you're still going to have people to say, it's dangerous. Why are you going? And they're going to mention, you know, those names, which I'm not even going to throw out, that tortured Colombia in the 70s and 80s, and early 90s. They don't have that issue anymore. That city has totally changed. It is totally, there's areas where it's just totally cosmopolitan. You do have underprivileged people. You do have underprivileged people here. I can go downstairs right now. There'll be somebody living under the building. So don't be too American. And I used to have to be told when I travel, because I took my American attitude with me. Stop being American. Stop being American. And that just meant lose that uppity attitude that you have from being in the U.S. and just be a human being. The one thing I had to learn, though, no matter where I went, from Southeast Asia to Dubai to Europe to South and Central America, the one thing that shocked me the most was when I ordered chicken. And I was like, man, what's wrong with this chicken? This chicken is sick. These chicken's bony and scrawny, like the leg was like eating like meat off an ink pen. It was just, and then I realized it's not them, it's us. We inject our food with so much hormones, and I mean, our chicken can barely stand up. They've been pumped up and juiced up just to get the breast off of it and the meat off of it. It's not like that in the rest of the world. You know, tomatoes here, you know, they inject it with so much stuff so that they can make the travel. I have a tomato sitting on the counter right now I've had for a week. It's still good. That thing, I can ship it to 3 or 4 people around the country and it'll still be alive and still good. There, that stuff, you know, is perishable. So you have, and oh my God, a tomato in Guatemala. Oh my God, a tomato in Guatemala. Oh, it tastes like a fruit, like a strawberry. It's amazing. You know, so there's another thing too. Your food is going to be healthier. Well, you know, Colombians like to fry a lot of food. And personally, I think there's not a lot of seasoning in the food. No offense to my paisa people. You know, and if you saw my other videos, I'm not a fan, you know, of the food too much. There's another, wasn't so much positive for me. But I knew how to shop, and I knew what I like, and I got what I like. And you can eat American anywhere you want to go to, or you can eat Brazilian, or you can eat, you know, Jamaican or Asian. You can eat anything you want. You're just going to pay a little bit more for it. But anyway, to sum this video up, I just want to say, if it's something that you want to do, if you're thinking of moving to Colombia, do it. Do it. Work it out. Especially if you have no excuse right now if you work from home. You have no excuse. Well, you do have 2 excuses. You can't leave. Even if you do have a passport, you can't leave. And that brings me on my favorite book. My favorite book in the world is my passport. You know, that's one thing I love about this country. They gave me the ability to leave and come back to visit family, or live here if I want to come back. But they gave me the ability to be free. So for those who think you're free, if you don't have a passport, you can't leave. You are locked in this. So get to work. Get to work. If you do not have a passport, you are locked in this country. You cannot leave. Now you can walk in Canada maybe. Well, actually now you need a passport to get into Canada too, or a passport card. I think you can walk into Mexico still, but you can't come back. So you need to have that passport. Get your passport. If there's anything you do right now, I don't know if the embassies are still open in the U.S. They are not around the rest of the world, from my understanding, but U.S. embassies meaning. But when you have the chance, get your passport, whether you're going to use it or not, get your passport. You cannot leave this country without a passport. Okay? You cannot. And no one's going to let you land and get in their country and get a visa if you don't have that passport. So get your passport. I know I'm all over the place on this subject, but I just want to put out, ultimately, keep the options open. if you want to live a quality of life and you want to feel safe, and I felt safe in Colombia, and I heard gunshots twice, gunshots, but I knew they weren't shooting at me, and for some reason it never bothered me. And I don't hear gunshots here, but yet I feel unsafe, in certain areas. I shouldn't have to carry my pistol around down here. I've only done it a couple of times, but for the most part, I don't carry it because I don't have a concealed license anyway. So for those who are monitoring me, I do have a pistol, but I don't carry it with me. It's Texas, you don't have to. And who's to say when they may run out, because people are buying them all up right now. Anyway, if it's something that you're open to, take a look at it. If I can offer any information, let me know. Take a look at my older videos and you'll see the life that I lived, the fun that I had, the cost of living. I go over the dollar, over their money, the denominations, the value right now, which I think last I checked was like 39 to 1. So, keep that in mind. Thanks for watching, and thank you so much for all my subscribers, and for those who don't even subscribe but they watch. Thank you for all my Guatemalan friends, and my Colombian friends, and my Philippine friends, and my Taiwanese friends, and a couple people I know in China. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for watching. We'll talk to you soon.
We have a YouTube channel. Like it.
Please comment and share if you like the video.
Please subscribe. Hit the bell, please.